Welcome back, guys. My name is Lisa. I am the knitting artist, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about color inspiration and where I get my ideas and art and yarn and all that fun stuff. So let's get started. If you saw my first video over the Colorway Morning Garden stream, I had a pretty long introduction where I talked about my process and how I got started, especially my senior year of college when I was creating all of those paintings. I'm not going to go into those details again today, so don't worry. Just know that there is an introduction on that video if you're curious to learn more about like how I got started and where everything kind of came from. But I will tell you a little bit more about me and my business. So I'm an artist, and my main discipline in art is oil painting, and specifically oil paintings with knitted forms in them. So I create landscapes and more recently waterscapes. Yeah, the things behind me that have knitted objects in them. So if you look close enough, you can see there are knitted forms floating around in the water. The one I'm going to talk to you guys about today is a landscape because it's one of my earlier paintings. So something I've been doing since college is creating these knitted landscapes that are made up of knitted forms, and I work from an all-white still life that I then shine a colored light onto. So I'm working and looking at something that has been created in physical form and recreating it to how I see it in my brain. And all of these ideas actually come from Disney movies and Disney scenes, or animated movies in general, some Dr. Seuss, a little bit of Studio Ghibli sometimes, and just ideas and things I see in those films that I really, really like. So I'm going to talk to you guys about colorway today, inspired by one of my earliest paintings. This colorway is very pink and green and earthy. I consider it like my fall colorway, like if you're wanting something very fall. And this colorway is called Mushroom Petal Bloom. And I will explain the titles at some point in this video, I promise, because I know it's a crazy title, Mushroom Petal Bloom. Like, why? But this colorway has got a lot of pink and maroon, and then hints of like a dirty green, and a nice dusty violet. I call it a dirty violet. There we go. Still learning where the camera's at. And there's also little peeps of gold in there. So you could actually fade it with Morning Garden Stream, the other colorway I've already talked about. But Mushroom Petal Bloom is one of the first colorways I developed when I was working on becoming an indie dyer. And like I said, it's my like fall earthy colorway. And it's interesting to see how the different bases dye up. So on my worsted base, which is my heaviest weight yarn, the color is a little bit deeper. It's a little bit pinker and a little bit darker. There we go. Camera's right there. So it's the same colorway, same amount of dye, but the yarn takes it differently. Whereas with my sock base, it's a lot paler. This is a 4-ply and it has nylon in it. So as you can see, the color is not quite as vibrant. It's a little bit more matte, but I really, really like it. I have a pair of socks actually that I made with this yarn. And then I have silk that is just, it's a single ply 70/30 merino silk, and the dye, you know, it looks pretty close to the sock dye on this one actually. But it's just, again, it's definitely not the same as this worsted for sure. But so the painting itself, I am putting on the screen for you guys right now. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about where the inspiration for that painting came from. And talk about the colors and everything like that. So this painting is called Mushroom Petal Bloom. The title actually, and the titles for pretty much all my paintings, came from refrigerator poetry. So if you don't know what refrigerator poetry is, it is a set of words that are magnetic that people put on their refrigerators to make up little haikus or sentences or just be creative and when they need brain breaks. And so I had a set that was on my fridge, and I was just randomly playing around and making 3-word sentences. And it was time for my BFA show, and I didn't know what to title my paintings. And I had all these weird 3-word sentences, 3-word phrases on my refrigerator. And so that's where Morning Garden Stream came from. That's where Mushroom Petal Bloom came from. That's where Fallen Moon Drops and Frozen Summer Harvest, and all those phrases actually came from what my brain made on the refrigerator. So that's kind of cool. Fun fact. But anyway, this specific painting is inspired by both mainly a concept art scene that I saw in a book about the movie Wreck-It Ralph. So I'm going to put that up on the screen for you guys too. In this specific scene, it's from the Sugar Rush part of the movie where they're doing the racing and they're in the candy video game. And there are 2 upside down ice cream cones. And these 2 upside down ice cream cones just inspired me. There was just something about it made me think, okay, knitting needles, sticking out, pointing at each other, going up into the air. Like, it just, I don't know, it just hit me. So I did a bunch of sketches, and I came up with this idea to make these 2 giant knitted hills, which were representative of the ice cream. And then they had 2 large poles, which I guess you could think they were knitting needles. When I set them up in my studio, they were just like paper tubes that I made because knitting needles weren't really what I was going for. So there are these 2 long poles sticking out of the knitting needles, but then there's sort of a knitted ribbon. It's kind of knitted if you really think about it. Connecting those 2 poles together and then going down into the ground, which is a pink fabric type landscape. A lot of my early landscapes have a lot of folds and creases in them because I was using fabrics and crumpled paper, and I just really like the effects that I can get when I paint the folds and the crumpled paper, because I like to abstract it enough to where you really just get the shadows and the highlights. So that's kind of the idea behind this painting. I picked the pink and the green. I played around with a lot of different color combinations for this one actually. I did some sketches in my notebook, and I played around with different colored lights because I shine colored lights on my still lifes. And the pink and the green just worked. I put a green piece of paper behind one of the forms. I shined a pink light, and the green reflected to create the green reflection. And then some of the yellow was both just from the natural lighting and me deciding that it needed yellow. So that's kind of where that yellow came from. And then the very, very deep maroon that's in the sky was kind of an accident. I didn't really know what I was going to do with the sky, but I knew that I kind of liked playing with the blending and the clouds. And at the time, my professor recommended a color of oil paint called brown pink. And he said, you need to glaze some of these dark clouds with this brown pink paint. And so I did, and I loved it. And that is the cloud that's in the sky on this painting. And I still love that color. I use it a lot in my pink and red paintings because it's just such a nice, earthy pink color. Yeah, so that is the story of the painting Mushroom Petal Bloom, inspired by Wreck-It Ralph and interpreted by me. I am going to now switch it over to another clip video showing you guys the yarn laid out and the order that I dye everything in, alongside the image. So we'll see you in a sec. So this is the colorway laid out for you guys to see. You can kind of get an idea of where all the different colors go. I'm going to kind of explain to you guys how I decided which colors went where based on the artwork, and I'm also going to put a picture-in-picture up here of the artwork so you guys can get an idea. But on this specific colorway, I knew I wanted a lot of pink, and I wanted some darker pink and maroon. When I was actually first developing this colorway, and I was using Kool-Aid because I was an amateur, it was a brighter, more sunny, springy colorway. And then when I started using the acid dyes, the colors got deeper, and it just became a very fall, more muted colorway, but I really, really like it. So this whole area up here actually represents that corner that I said I did the glazing in earlier. So the maroon and the pink is kind of the clouded sky. And then as we're working our way clockwise down the painting, we get into that first knitted form, which has a green highlight on it and then some pink and purple shadows. Then we're working our way kind of into the ribbon that's coming off of the poles. And that ribbon has the yellow and the green in it. And that leads us down into the ground, which is the pink and purple crumpled paper or crumpled fabric. I don't remember to this date which one. Anyway, pink, purple, maroon fabric. And then a little bit more of that ribbon popping in there along with more of the ground. I believe at this point we are now on the second large knitted object, which has a bright yellow highlight on it, and then the rest of it is pretty much pink. And then we work our way back into the sky, which has the purples and the maroons. So that kind of gives you a story about why I chose the colors I chose and where I place them. Again, I usually just do squirt bottles because this side of the yarn is different from that side. I'm not trying to, just make everything match up. I want it to really represent the painting in its truest form, and the only way I can do that is by honestly placing the colors on the yarn where they are in the artwork. So if you were to look at my little guide here, that kind of gives you an idea. It looks like a snake with the different colors telling me about what the proportions are. I mean, they change every time because I'm just kind of going for it, but this is essentially what the yarn looks like laid out. So, yeah, I'm going to take you guys back over to my yarn table. We'll talk patterns, and then we'll be done. Okay, let's take a look at the yarns again, the different bases, and some pattern ideas. So, I showed you guys, the basic colorway all laid out and in the skein. So this is my sock. This is my worsted. And this is my light fingering. I don't have this colorway on the DK yet because I had to limit what I could dye on DK for my first go round, but I should soon. Something that I do, mainly on my light base, is I dye both the plain all the way through variegated, but then I also dye a speckle version. And the speckle version is the same colorway, the same proportions of dye, the same dye mixture, but I kind of scribble it all over the yarn instead of going all the way through. So you end up with a paler colorway that has a lot of white showing through in areas that looks very, very faded and gives you a good contrast between these two if you actually wanted to do a fade. I've also been dyeing tonals. So I take some of the recipes from the variegated colorways and I do tonals out of them. In the case of Mushroom Petal Bloom, I've actually done two tonals. I've done what I call Burgundy Hills, and I've done what I call Violet Dusk. Violet Dusk? Yeah, Violet Dusk. And obviously Burgundy Hills is a maroon. Violet Dusk is that dirty purple, and I love the dirty purple so much. I dye the tonals on, depending on which tonal, on different bases as well. I don't do any sock, but I do it on my worsteds and my silk and my DKs. So here's the Burgundy Hills on the silk paired with the Mushroom Petal Bloom on the silk. So you can get a kind of idea of the contrast that you're getting. I really like high contrast, so my goal is always to get these tonals to be a little bit deeper or a little bit darker than the yarn that they're paired with, just so that way you could buy two skeins and make a two color or a striping project. A couple of patterns that I have examples of in this yarn. When I first started doing sock yarn, I did make some socks. I don't usually bring these to festivals anymore because I wear them. And now that they've been worn a little bit, you don't want to be touching these, even though I do wash them, I promise. But if you look close enough, you can still see that matte finish and how much lighter this is compared to this. Same colorway, but completely different look. And yes, these have been washed a couple times, but they have barely faded, so they are washed fast. So again, these are just a basic sock. Any sock pattern that's good for variegated yarn would work with this yarn. But then I also made this cowl out of the light base, and this cowl is called the Willow Cowl. Actually, it goes this way. And when you wear it, it actually stacks on your neck. so I don't know if I can put it on over my headphones. So imagine that. It stacks over your neck, kind of like that, and it layers. And this works really good with a lot of variegated yarns. I specifically picked it at the time for this colorway because I just loved how the color was going to pool and play with it a lot. So I just really like that. And hey, it matches my shirt. This one actually matches a lot of things in my wardrobe, so I do tend to wear it when I'm teaching or when I'm gotta go somewhere and be nice, dressed up decent. I've been talking a lot. Yeah. Any variegated pattern, 1 skein or 2 skein or anything like that is gonna work good honestly with any of my yarns. So if you need a nice like fall earthy color, this is for you. Again, it's called Mushroom Petal Bloom. I have it in all the bases except for DK, and I have the speckly version as well as the regular version, and plenty of tonals that you could honestly get all 4 of these and you would just, have a heyday. I think these would make a great sweater. There'd be some good fades going on in here. So I hope you enjoyed my story. Hope you enjoyed watching and learning a little bit more about my colors, and I'll be back soon with another video. Until next time.